Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closures.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Ammar, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today, we are absolutely thrilled to be joined by Ken Daniel Jr., the founder and CEO of North Star Network, a boutique consulting agency focused on talent strategy, DEIB, and organizational transformation. With over 2 decades of experience helping Fortune 500 companies, government entities, and fast-growing startups build equitable cultures and future-ready leadership teams, Ken brings a thoughtful, strategic lens to people-first business transformation. Ken, welcome to Founders Future.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's such an amazing intro. I actually feel like I don't live up to it.
I'm sure you do. I'm excited to dive in. I always like to start from the beginning. So take us on a little trip down memory lane to before you started North Star Network. What were you doing at the time? And then what was really the motivation behind starting the company?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that question because I'm a big proponent that we're all the totality of all of our experiences. And so mine actually stems back a little bit to childhood. So originally, I'm born and raised in Detroit. And so as we all know, Detroit is the motor city. And having familial connections into the automotive industry, both of my familial grandparents working on the factory lines, Chrysler and GM, I've always had an affinity for the automotive industry, but never thought about actually entering it in a full-time capacity. However, when looking at my educational and career trajectory, eventually ended up at the University of Michigan's Ross School of Business. And while there, understood that I really wanted to lean into a career in marketing strategy, but also I've always had this innate pull towards social entrepreneurship, helping and supporting disenfranchised, disadvantaged audiences and communities. Because growing up in Detroit, being a first-generation college student, but also having an abundant amount of support and resources that to the rest of America is the status quo, but for individuals that come from these under-resourced and underrepresented communities is a true privilege. Having a two-parent household of both my parents instilled not only education, supporting me in those endeavors, but also put in my mind whatever I wanted to do, I could do. And taking that same mindset into such a prestigious university like the University of Michigan, again, as a first-gen college student, I knew I wanted to pursue business and I wanted to be in this space, but I also knew that every action that I made, every impact that I made, I wanted it to touch those who didn't have a mentor, who didn't have a path for upward mobility, who didn't know what they didn't know. So while pursuing my BBA, I also pursued a minor in social work. And it's because of that that I've always had that ability to connect business with positive social impact. And so when we look at, I think it was summer of 2018, I was in my third year at the University of Michigan, but my first full year at the business school because I did an additional year, and it was internship season. And so I'm applying to a whole bunch of different internships. And I always say it's divine intervention, where the first organization that reached out to me was, at the time, Fiat Chrysler Automobile, currently known as Stellantis. And in that role, in that interview, had a great opportunity, had a great conversation, but it was a sales internship. And as I expressed my interest in marketing, they actually made an internship for me. I was the first digital marketing intern in the company. And that was the beginning of the end. And the summer following, I returned back, was trying to actually go into the tech space or the true marketing space, but they again created an internship for me. And so I was working with the national digital marketing manager at the time. And then in 2020, we love a good pandemic throwback. I not only graduated from undergrad, but I also began my full-time career in the automotive industry working for Fiat Chrysler, also known as Stellantis. And so from 2020 to 2024, I climbed the corporate ladder extremely quickly. In September of 2020, moved to Connecticut and was the youngest metro area manager in that region for, I want to say, a year and a half. And following that, I was able to really lean into my career of marketing. And in 21, I moved to Baltimore, which is where I currently reside. And here in Baltimore, I was the regional head of digital marketing. So managed a $20 million digital advertising budget for 265 dealers across the Mid-Atlantic. And in that role, I was 24, I believe. youngest in the company's history, one of the very few people of color, African American, one of the only, if not very few, those who identify part of the LGBTQ community. And I recognize that in that role, not only was I breaking a lot of glass ceilings for myself, but I was also breaking those glass ceilings for those who are coming behind me. And killed it in that role, exceeded all expectations. And so in 23, I actually received my final promotion during my tenure at Stellantis as the National Multicultural Marketing Manager. And in this role, it was the true intersection of all of my passion points: sales-oriented, revenue generation, and business development, side of the house, marketing and engagement, and then last but not least, that social impact and multicultural engagement, because it was the melting pot of how do you engage authentically with these growth audiences in a way that not only validates their totality of their lived experiences, but most importantly, validates the brand's positioning within that community. And so I pursued that role for a year and a half, and it was at that half mark where I realized, even though my career long in different opportunities, because I've been, working since pretty much I was 8, but short in terms of in the totality of full-time work, I decided to take, and in September of 2024, I accepted a buyout, and I went ahead and launched 2 social impact ventures. One, which we'll be talking about today, is North Star Network, which is that consultancy which bridges all of the lived experiences and opportunities that I've been able to provide value add for the Fortune 100 organization, but then also a nonprofit titled the Reebok Foundation, which is an organization where we're actually in the process of building shipping container homes for individuals in moments of transition. And the totality of both of these organizations that really have allowed for me to propel in this entrepreneurial space. But more importantly, and the thing that I always lean back to, is providing paths for those who didn't have paths and providing an opportunity to build long-term legacy.
I love that. Thank you so much for breaking all of that down, because then it gives us a holistic view of what drives you today, why you got to where you are today. Let's shift over to the business aspect of it with North Star Network. 2 questions. Who would you say is your ideal customer? And then what are the offers and services you provide?
Yes, I love this question, because one of the biggest value propositions that I've identified for not just myself, but for the type of clients that we're looking to engage with, is we're looking to work with clients who are either medium or large size organizations, who are either making positive impacts in the community based on the work that they're doing, or they're trying to authentically connect with growth audiences or communities that leverage culture. So I'm a big proponent that in this realm of marketing, advertising, and engagement, culture transcends race. And what I mean by that is, when we look at race in the scope of just marketing, for instance, if you think about Thanksgiving dinner, that's the food that you're eating. The food itself is what makes each community, each race and ethnicity uniquely theirs. But when you think of culture, is your drunk Uncle Johnny who fell asleep watching the game, or your messy aunt who asking questions and don't have her own house in order. These are archetypes that you can find in any community, because these are components of culture. And so when organizations are leaning into culture as their driving force in developing their messaging and connecting with their potential consumers, but also in aligning in what are the pain points that they can alleviate for their end consumer and their consumer, the full consumer cycle and ecosystem that they're working within, that's the magic where North Star comes in. And then even looking at organizations who are making positive impacts in the community, those organizations need a way to not only project their messaging out in an authentic manner, but also to transition and convert that traction, website analytics, whatever that is, into lower funnel actions. And so transitioning into the services that we provide, it falls within 4 categories. So we have North Star Network, which is the umbrella, but under that, you have North Star Strategy, Digital, Creative, and Branding. Those are the 4 areas where we provide that human-centric, culture-centric, strategic viewpoint as consultants. And the best part about North Star is the whole ecosystem is based on freelance consultants and individuals who have subject matter expertise, but most importantly, who understand the need for diverse representation in these spaces, for more authentic and more what's the word I'm looking for, or collaborative environments. And last but not least, who aren't afraid to be innovative and bring in new ideas to industries specifically that have historically have done things for the same time over and over again, which is the prime connection to the automotive industry.
Got it. When it comes to client acquisition and bringing in more leads for your business specifically, how are you currently acquiring your customers specifically?
Yeah. So there's three components or three pipelines that we are still building out, because I will say we're still sub a full year of operation. So the biggest one has been word of mouth. So luckily, throughout my career, I've been able to build a decent name for myself in the spaces that I work within. And so once I made this jump, there was an abundant amount of people who wanted to support, amplify, share, and connect me with individuals in their network, especially given during my time working within an organization, you can't necessarily brand yourself. You can't necessarily have that ability to do side work. And so this was a real opportunity for me to tap into that network and really leverage the earned equity and the earned social capital that I've gained. The second thing has been we've really been leaning in on RFP proposals. One of the biggest opportunities we found is leveraging platforms like Odoo, BidNet, and et cetera, to identify opportunities for not only municipal and federal contracts, but also nonprofit, community-based organizations who are looking for this type of marketing support, strategy development, for revenue development. And the last thing has been, really ramping up our social media presence. I've always said that I am a true strategist at heart, and so getting in front of the camera is a pain point of mine, and not necessarily because I get shy or I can't convey a narrative, but more so it's easier for me to build out a plan for someone else than for myself. And so that is something where we've been able to luckily have individuals in our network to help support and amplify the voice and the messaging that we're putting out there, but just getting people to recognize what makes North Star unique, for one, but for two, why is it that we're doing what we're doing? Because it's so personally tied to my vision, my mission, my trajectory, all the things that I navigated throughout my life, that's a big part of the narrative of why North Star. So those will be the three areas of lead generation that we've incorporated so far as part of our organizational foundation.
When you think of your vision, obviously you're still starting this out. It's less than 1 year old. But when you think, let's say, over the next 6 to 12 months, what specific revenue targets are you aiming for?
So I would say revenue. I'm a big proponent of shooting for stars. So I would say as we close out this year, I would love ideally hit around the 350 to 450 range. But really, when looking at 2026 and beyond, I don't anticipate having below 750,000 years in terms of revenue. And a big component of that is my expertise of working with organizations of that magnitude. One of the biggest, especially just from the consulting I've done, even outside of North Star, one of the biggest hangups that a lot of startup entities have is that they don't have the corporate experience and how to navigate corporate contracts, how to have those conversations, what it means when you don't necessarily hear from your potential client in 3 months, not 3 months, 3 weeks, where it's like, hey, they're probably going through some internal shifts or they have to communicate this throughout the ladder. Or simple as how do you draft an email for someone in the corporate space to share internally, because we know that's how decisions are really made. One of the things that I've really been able to lean on and even provide this consulting services for some of the clients I'm working with is how to convert your small business, your sole proprietorship, your single member LLC in a mindset of a true corporate entity. So yeah, look, those are the revenue targets. That's also the logic behind it.
I love that. And it's great that you have that logical aspect behind. I'm super curious with those revenue targets in mind. What do you feel are the biggest challenges you're facing to getting there right now?
I would say the biggest challenge is actually the current ecosystem that we're in. Everyone is looking for opportunities, and the number of opportunities are dwindling down, especially in the growth audience and in the culture-centric space. Especially when we look at a lot of things that are happening across the country. It's just a very unique and very interesting space to navigate. And you have to build more equity with the potential clients that you're bringing on and present more of a strategic approach of, hey, we're not saying diversity, equity, and inclusion just to say diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're saying culture-driven, creative, and messaging that transcends race and ethnicity, but that most importantly can connect back to sales, that can connect back to lower funnel actions. And I would say that's one of the biggest opportunities, one of the biggest barriers. But then also, and I think this is something that all startups or small business owners can attest to, it's really getting your name out there. And it's really earning that notoriety, because so transparently, it's much easier to build a name with yourself when you have a Fortune 100 company behind yourself name. Whereas if you don't have that same platform, if you will, it takes a little bit more time for that traction to build up. And so when I'm looking at, okay, how many RFPs have we submitted versus how many leads have we received, how much content have we pushed out there, you're always trying to find out what that equation is to equate leads and sales, but it's consistently changing.
Yeah. Yeah, you're echoing the same sentiments that a lot of people in your space are echoing right now, because I've talked to a lot of different consultants in this general area, and especially with the current political climate, the way things are, they're finding a downturn in terms of the people. So a big challenge becomes lead generation and proper positioning and messaging when it comes to how you're approaching these types of specs. I'm super curious though, with the people that are interested in working with you, what is the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, so the best way to reach out is leveraging our website, www.nstarnetwork.com. But then also, I'm a big proponent of reach out. Like, I'm a very personable person. I'm big on relationships. So even please send an email over to info@nstarnetwork.com, because that's my direct inbox. If you're emailing that, you'll be able to reach out to me. And then also following us on socials @NStar Network, because consistent, putting out new content, highlighting what makes us unique, what is our value proposition, but also we'll be transitioning into some industry spotlights and subject matter expert spotlights, and really identifying ways to provide more of a resource just to our network, because we recognize that the work that we're doing is not siloed. We all have to come together. We all have to share resources, especially in disenfranchised communities, communities of colors, minorities, minority business owner, women business owner, all different things. We have to come together to recognize that if it's not for the aggregate of resources that we could pull together, we won't necessarily be successful. And the last thing I'll say really quickly is we've also launched a blog and an educational platform called the Luminary Black Print. And that is a platform where consistently showing, like, highlighting best case scenarios and best practices. And most importantly, we're sharing the story behind North Star. With us really launching less than a year ago, there's still a lot to be told about why we are where we are and where is it that we're going to go.
Yeah, I love that. Ken, thank you so much for your time today.
I really appreciate it. It's been an absolute honor.
Yeah. So that wraps up another insightful episode of Founders Future. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to go to nstarnetwork.com. Email Ken at info@nstarnetwork.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And if you are a business owner and you're looking to scale your business and really enhance your sales and marketing efforts, visit closers.io to discover how we can support your growth journey. Until then, keep on climbing.